Hi, it's V with Crafting Daily Dose, and today I have an alternative for the July 2022 paper pumpkin called Sending Good Thoughts. Now this kit has 3 different card designs, and this month I'm making an interactive version of each one. This is today's card. There's a lot of detail on this card, and as I move it around to show you, you might also notice that that ship is moving, which I think is pretty cool. If you would like to be able to make this fun card, stick around and I'll take you through it step by step. Here are the supplies for this card. I'm using the basic gray card base as well as this embossed panel from the kit, and then several of the die cuts. I've got the 2 smaller seagulls, the medium-sized bottle, as well as this little label here, the one that has a hole in it. I'll be using about 18 inches of the linen thread, but that measurement doesn't have to be exact. And I've added 2 pieces of basic white cardstock. Each one is 2.5 inches across by 1.5 inches high. Now, in order to create movement with this card, we need to create some kind of opening. Look through your stash to see if you have a small oval or a small circle die. I don't have an oval, but I do have this, which is actually a tulip petal from the tulips die set, and this is what I'm going to be using. My die is about 1 inch wide and a little bit more than 1/2 inch tall. Basically, I want the size to be large enough so that a dimensional can move freely within this space. If you don't have any dies that would work, I'll also show you how to create that opening with a craft knife or with your trimmer. Instead of stamping with the Bermuda Bay ink that came with the kit, I'm using Pacific Point and Basic Gray. And finally, this is optional, but I'll be adding a little bit of shine with my Wink of Stella pen. And now we're ready to get started. I like to start with the stamping, and for that I've got the foam mat from my Stamparatus down. This gives me a little bit of cushion underneath the paper, which I like to have when I'm stamping with clear photopolymer stamps. I'm stamping the Can't Wait to See You sentiment using Basic Gray ink. Now I'm switching over to the ship image, and I'm going to stamp one onto one of those pieces of basic white cardstock. It's sized to be a pretty tight fit. I'm going to take my snips and fussy cut this out, leaving a white border around the image. I'll start with a rough cut first and then come back in for more details. Now I'll stamp that same image on the inside of my card. Remember to put it in landscape orientation. Next, I'm going to stamp onto this panel. What I want to do is to use that texture stamp to create some speckles that are going to go underneath where my bottle is, which means that I have to place my bottle first, and I'm placing it right about here. So it's about midway horizontally, but it's a little bit lower than the middle. That way I have room to put my birds up here towards the top. Now I'm going to use a pen to mark the bottom edge of this bottle. You might want to use a pencil instead, but really it doesn't matter, because when I come back to glue the bottle on, I'm going to purposely shift it down so that that gets covered up. I've only marked this portion of it so that I can tell where my speckles need to be. I'm using Pacific Point ink for this part, and I'm rotating my stamp a little bit so that there's some variation. Next, I'm going to take my bottle and I'm going to go ahead and put a little swipe of Stampin' Seal on the back here. Just right at the neck of that bottle. I'll take my linen thread and leave myself about a 6-inch tail or so, and I will go ahead and start to wrap it around the neck of the bottle. I was able to wrap it about 4 times there. And then I'll go ahead and tie a little knot. I'm going to tie a bow later, but I'll save that for now. And once this is in place, I will go ahead and glue down my bottle. I want the bottle and the embossed panel to be adhered together before I create that opening. Next, I'm going to go ahead and place my ship down. I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to sort of hover it over the ship. So right now I am in the middle horizontally and I'm right about at the base of the sails. I'll scoot this out of the way and go ahead and make my mark. Now I'll bring in the little die that I'm using and I'll go ahead and center it over that mark. Now I'm going to put this through my cut and emboss machine, but I'm only going to be covering up this section. I don't want to run this part through my machine. Here's a look at what I mean by that. Now I've put a little piece of washi tape there to hold this in place, and I'm using my cutting plate to only cover up this section that has the die. I'm not covering up the part with the thread. So here's what that looks like. Now it doesn't matter at all that it's not a perfect oval shape because all of this is going to be covered up when we go ahead and assemble. Let's say that you have a die that is close but not quite what you need. Here's a little leaf-shaped die from the Artistic die set. It's long enough, it's a little bit more than 1 inch wide, but it's not quite tall enough. So this is the size of a dimensional, and you can see that it's going to just fit into that space. So there's not going to be a lot of room for this to be able to move up and down. So I'll show you what you can do in that case. Go ahead and cut what you have. It's just a way to get a hole started. Once I have that opening, I can just use my snips to make it a little bit taller. Again, this doesn't have to be pretty because this is not going to be seen at all. Now that my opening is bigger, if I put a dimensional in here, it's going to have room to move up and down and side to side. So this is going to work. You can also draw out a line that is about 1 inch wide and about 1/2 inch tall, a little bit more than that. And here I'm just eyeballing it, but you can use a ruler to actually measure. You can draw that into a rough oval and then cut that with a craft blade, or put it into your trimmer. I'm going to turn it this way so that you can see. And I'm just lining up that line that I made with the center of my track. I'll go ahead and cut it. And then turn it the other way and cut into that some. I don't even have to match up the line that I drew exactly. Again, I'm just trying to create an opening. And once there's a little bit of an opening there, then I have room to put the blade of my snips in, and I can go ahead and trim out a rough oval shape. Remember, just as long as there's enough room for a dimensional to move around in that space, and small enough so that it's still covered up by your ship, then you're good to go. Now comes the assembly, which I think is really fun. So I'm taking this piece of basic white cardstock, the remaining one that I did not stamp on, and I want to place it behind my panel so that it's covering up this opening. Now I want to put it so that it's roughly right underneath this section of the bottle here. Now to do that, I'm going to hold it up to the light. Now you won't be able to see mine, but at home when you do this and hold it up to the light, you should be able to see when that piece is right behind the bottle. I'm going to go ahead and set that down. Now I've got a single dimensional foam sticker, and I'm going to put it right in the center of this space. I'm putting flat sides parallel to the top and to the bottom of the opening. That just helps to maximize the amount of movement that I can get. So that's what it looks like. Now I'll peel off the backing and I will put my ship in place. Right now it's pretty much centered in that bottle, but you can see that it's going to be able to move. Right now it's moving a lot more than we want it to, so we're going to need some boundaries. Boundaries are good. And we'll do that by creating a sort of cage around this piece here on the back using our foam. So what I'm going to do with my ship is I'm going to push it as far to the left as I want it to be able to go. I don't want it to go past this because then it starts to come out from the edge of the bottle, and that doesn't look quite right. So I'm going to put it kind of at its maximum position. I'm holding that still in place, and then I'm going to put some foam right next to that. And that way, our piece is going to bump up against this foam and it's not going to be able to go any further, which means on the other side, our ship cannot go any further past that point. Now I'm going to push it all the way over to the right as far as I want it to be able to go. Same thing, I'm going to hold it in place. And I'm going to put some dimensionals. And this is going to act as a stop in this direction. So now it can only slide this far, which means that your ship can only go this far. It's not going to go past the outline of the bottle. Now you can probably guess we need to push it down as far down below as we want it to go and hold that in place. And now from the front, I'm going to push it up as high as I want it to go. So let's test. Once things are looking good, you're going to want to flip it to the back again and put some additional foam so that the rest of the panel is supported. You can use dimensionals for this, but I like to cut out strips from foam adhesive sheet just because it's easier to work with the bigger pieces. All of these are the same thickness, so feel free to use them interchangeably. Now before I adhere this panel to my card base, I'm going to center this little piece of cardstock in the middle of this sort of cage that I've built around it. And I'll flip it over from the other side and go ahead and use some washi tape to hold the ship in place. The reason that I'm doing that is that I don't want this to slip and slide when I go to adhere this panel down. Because if it slips, it might get caught by the adhesive on one of these dimensionals, and then of course it won't move at all. I'm taking a quick peek to make sure that this is right side up. Now make sure that you test it before you press everything down firmly. Now that our mechanism is in place, we can go ahead and finish the decoration. I'm brushing some Wink of Stella onto the clouds. It doesn't show up well on camera, but in real life it adds a nice amount of shimmer. I'm going to curl up the wingtips of the birds a little bit before I glue them down. And then finally, I'm going to tie on that tag. I'll make a little knot and then a bow. There's our finished card. On the inside, we've got the ship image, and then on the outside, we've got some shimmer, some texture, and then this tag that moves so that you can shift it over when you need to place it inside the envelope. And then, of course, there's the fun movement from the ship. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity. If you're interested in Paper Pumpkin but don't have a demonstrator, you can find my subscription link as well as all of my other links in the description box below. If you get a chance to try this project, I would love to see it, so share it in my Facebook group or tag me if you're sharing elsewhere. I hope to see you again next time, and until then, have a great day.